Hey you guys, welcome to another episode of the Virtual Art Studio. My name is Erin Chamberlain, and today I'm going to be teaching you how to make this low-relief cardboard spaceship. This is great if you're studying space right now in your classroom. It's from easy recycled materials, so this should be a fun project for you guys. Hope you enjoy. This video is part of the Acadiana Center for the Arts online series called Virtual Art Studio, where teaching artists present lessons in visual art, dance, music, and more that you can enjoy from anywhere. So one of the reasons that I love this project so much is because we're using a recycled material. How many of you have a ton of boxes at home now since you've had Christmas, right? So cardboard is a recyclable material that is totally versatile, totally pliable. It's just a great material to work with. So I'm going to show you a couple of techniques today that make it just a more interesting material to work with. Okay, you guys, before we get started with this project, we're going to go over the supplies that you're going to need. The first thing that you're going to need is some cardboard. I'm going to have two pieces that I use just because they're on the smaller side. You'll need one for the background and you'll need one for your spaceship along with your planet or moon and your fire up underneath your spaceship. And you'll also need one small piece for the back side of your spaceship. So have a good amount of cardboard ready. A box cutter or an Exacto Blade. Today I'll be using the box cutter. Either one will do. I would suggest, especially if you're working with little kids, that you cut out their spaceship and all their smaller parts. You'll also need Sharpies. I usually have a couple on hand just so that in case one dries out, I've got an extra one. You'll also need white school glue. Any kind of white school glue will do. I am using foil today. You could also potentially use some silver paint, but I like to use recycled stuff. I'm sure you have some foil on hand. Just adds a little bit of sparkle to this project. And then of course, you're going to need your paints. I've got all the primaries, blue, red, yellow, and then I have black and white. I have a couple of paintbrushes. It's not necessary that you have more than one, really, but so that I can move along quicker in the video, I'm going to use a couple of brushes. Also have paper towel on hand, something to put your paint in if you decided to mix the colors, although I'm just going to be using the primaries as is today. And then you'll also need a cup of water. And finally, you'll need a piece of white paper. Okay, you guys, let's get started with our super cute spaceship build. We're going to start with the background piece and then move on from there with our spaceship. So, first thing that you need to do is the background size doesn't really matter as long as you make your spaceship smaller than the background piece that you choose. So, my suggestion to you is find a good solid piece of cardboard and use what you got. What I did was use the wings of a cardboard box, and that was the perfect width I found, so I don't have to do as much cutting. So I always suggest when you're doing cuts that you have something underneath whatever it is that you're cutting. So I have my second piece of cardboard up under here so that I'm not cutting the table. So this is okay. I think I'm gonna stop here because up here I've got some scratches and stuff. So I don't have a ruler, so you can, if you see there's corrugation lines right here, you can use your Sharpie and draw that out so that you can make a better straight cut. So just follow along. And this is something that the teacher, again, you might want to do ahead of time so that the kids have all their stuff ready to go, but that's completely up to you. So I've traced my corrugation line with my Sharpie, and now I'm going to give it a cut. Remember, with your Exacto blades, you lefty-loosey, pull the blade out, not quite to that line there, tighten it back up. Some of them are a little bit different, so it depends on what kind of blade you've got. And now I'm going to go ahead and score for the first time with even pressure. Then the second time, now that I've got my first cut, I can go back through it, press a little bit harder, check it, not quite, one more time. If for some reason it doesn't go all the way through, you can flip it over and score it as well, and that will help. So here's a quick background piece. I'm going to tear off this tape on mine, and I think that's good. So next part is going to be making a template for your rocket ship. So you're going to need a piece of paper. I'm going to clear up my space. So with this piece of paper, we're going to be using bilateral symmetry to create our rocket ship shape. And again, you want it to fall within the space of your cardboard here. So I'm going to fold my paper in half. And I'm only going to draw one side of my rocket ship here. So at the bottom, I want some sort of part that has the fire come out. So I'm going to do a little triangle, and I'm going to come straight across. Then here is where my leg's going to be. So I'm going to come up a little bit. That tells me how thick my leg is going to be. And then I'm going to come down at an angle, follow that same angle, almost like a parallel, but diagonal, of course. And then I want to make sure that it follows along straight. Connect, connect, straight across. There's the basic part of my leg. And now I'm going to do the actual rocket ship. Now, I'm looking at this space here and it's a little short, so I think I'm going to bring over my rocket ship to make it a little bit wider. And I'm looking again at the distance of my background for how much space I want to take up, how tall I want my piece to be. And I'm going to go ahead and connect down. So this is only one half of our rocket ship, right? So here's where you can use scissors. Again, I'm going to use my box cutter. I'm not going to do it on top of my background space because I want that to stay nice this time around. So I'm going to use a different piece of cardboard underneath my Exacto when I'm cutting this out. Oh, tighten. So I'm going to open this up, and there's my rocket ship. And I like that size of it. Next, I'm going to do my moon or a planet, and then I'm going to do the fire. So I don't have any more space on that other piece of paper, so I'm going to do it on a new one. Same concept for the moon, or if you have in your classroom, you could use a bottle cap, or pretty much anything that's a circle to trace a circle, but bilateral symmetry will get the job done too. So draw your half circle, your semicircle. That's going to be for my moon or my planet. Some students may want to add rings if they've got Saturn. So you choose what kind of planet that you're going to make and how big. Maybe you do more than one planet. Maybe you do two. Here's going to be my fire. Since it's going to be coming out of the base of my rocket ship here, I want it to kind of poof out a little bit. So I'm going to draw it straight over like that. And then poof, poof, poof. Okay? And again, cut it out with your scissors. So now I have all three of my parts. Now I'm going to be tracing this onto my other piece of cardboard. If you've cut up part of your cardboard, I'd suggest turning your cardboard either completely over and using the other side if it's nice. Sometimes it's got tape or stickers, avoid those spaces, or you can use the other side, whichever. I'm going to go ahead and use this empty space here, and I'm going to trace all my parts. Okay, now I'm going to use my Exacto Blade. I like to cut these into smaller parts so that it's a little bit easier to cut instead of having this huge piece. Okay, you guys, one suggestion I might have, if you're having difficulty cutting out these smaller pieces, is maybe for this you use cotton balls or some sort of batting, and maybe for this you just use a bottle cap. There's other recycled materials that you could use instead of cardboard for these two pieces. But I would use cardboard for this just because there's a cool little technique I'm going to show you to reveal the corrugation that gives some interesting texture. Okay, so I'm going to show you that part next. So with this part, I want to reveal some of my corrugation in my spaceship. So I'm going to draw out the lines, pretty much all the details next onto my spaceship, and then cut out the part that I want to reveal the corrugation. So I know that I want a circle in the middle of my spaceship, so I'm going to use the one that I already have. It's a little on the big side, so I'm going to freehand draw it, but you can definitely trace something. Okay, then I'm going to bring down my rocket ship all the way to the base on both sides. And it's up to you if you want to bring this up or just leave it as it is. It's probably easier to just leave it straight across. In my original design, I made a little diamond there. And then any other details that you want to add to spice up your spaceship would be interesting. We're going to add a piece later here and here that's going to make it more interesting as well. But now we know where we need to cut. So with your Exacto blade, you're going to make a cut along the side, the left side here. Be very careful because you don't have that much space. Now, you're not going to press very hard on this part. The goal is not to cut these completely off. You're just going through the very first like skin layer, and you'll see what I mean in just a second. So not a ton of pressure, just enough to cut through that first layer. Okay, and then you're also going to do that across the base here. Okay, and then I want to cut this completely out so that I can put a little astronaut in there. You could do an astronaut, you can do an alien. We'll do that a little bit later. But I'm going to go ahead and cut this out. We've got this part cut, this part cut, this part cut. Now you can reveal the corrugation. And here's the fun part where you get a little more interesting texture. So you're just going to peel off that first layer. And if it doesn't quite pick up, try starting on the other end where you can completely tear it. Good. Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. You don't want this as much. You want this. This is the cool, interesting texture, right? You can leave it like this at this point because that's some pretty cool texture. Or if you want to reveal a little bit more of the lines, you can take your paintbrush or a pencil and simply pull through each of these. Our moon is done, at least in terms of cutting them out. Now we're going to start the painting process. So we're going to paint the background first so that it can start drying, so that we're ready to glue on these pieces after we've painted them as well. So here we go. Okay, you guys, I've got everything set up ready to paint. We're going to start with the background. It's going to be black, and then we're going to do some little stars, and I'm going to show you a cool technique. So here we go. I always dip my paintbrush a little bit in the water, stir up my black. Sometimes it gets a little chunky. Remember, when you're painting, you want long strokes. Students tend to do small stuff and it leaves a lot of chunks. So long strokes are best so that you're not leaving thick strokes of paint. That takes a lot longer to dry. Okay, make sure that there are no chunks anywhere. Spread it out, and then go ahead and clean your brush to be ready for the white next. What I am going to do, so that my white paint is a little more loose, is add some water. Uh-oh, got some black in there. No big deal. You want this paint to be pretty loose because we're going to do splatters, which is what's going to make it look like stars. So you don't want it so wet that it's dripping. a little bit more. Ooh, I think the gray will be kind of nice. Okay, it's pretty wet. And now you're going to take your brush, stick out your finger, and give it some shakes. That's going to give us some cool stars, however much you'd like, a lot, a little. Ooh, yeah, so cool. Now, set this aside to dry. We are going to move on to our spaceship. So, paint whatever colors you would like on these spaces. I will say this, if you want more vibrant color, it's best if you paint white over this first, because the brown is a little bit dark. It doesn't make the best in color, so I will show you the difference between doing the white underneath and just the red by itself, or whatever color you pick, but for sure a white base if you want it to be nice and vibrant color. So this side I will do with the white first, just to show you. Of course, you're going to have to let this dry, because if you just put another color straight on top of that, it's just going to mix with the white. Again, very thin coat, it will dry relatively quickly. Okay. Now watch if I just put red on this. You can see through it. This is especially true for lighter colors like yellow. Yellow is not going to look very yellow. It's going to look mustardy. If you want it nice and vibrant, then you should definitely put white under the yellow. So I'm going to do that here. I want to make this part yellow. Okay, I'm going to let this dry for just a minute so that then I can show you the difference between the two. And let's move on to our moon or planet. If you want this to be the moon, simple, paint it white. I'm going to do one side as the moon and then one side as a planet to show you a different technique. So white, if you want it to be the moon. Now if you want it to be a planet, you can mix a couple of different colors by dabbing your brush. Of course, you need to work quickly because this paint's going to dry fast unless you leave a little bit of chunks this time around. It'll take a little bit longer to dry. And maybe I add some yellow. And I want these to mix. So I'm going to the more that you tap it, the more the two colors blend together. If you want to see more of that yellow, don't tap as much to get rid of the color, right? Ooh, this yellow is chunky. Okay, there we go. Simple planet. You could even add some white, whatever it is that you decide. And now I'm going to do my fire. I'm going to do white under the base coat. Again, you don't have to. Another option is mixing some white with the yellow. Just a little dab will do it, and that will make it more opaque of a color and less translucent, so you won't be able to see through it as much. So that's another resolution that you could do that's a bit quicker than waiting for the layers to dry in between. There we go. So I did my first layer of yellow. Raise your hand in class if you know what two colors make orange. Go ahead and tell your teacher. If you guessed yellow and red, you're right. Let's add a little bit of yellow. A little bit of red. Red's darker. I always tell my students, start with your lighter color, add the darker, but less. Don't start with the darkest color. It takes forever to get lighter. I'm going to just kind of dab sparingly. I don't want to cover up all my yellow. Now I'm going to come back in with some more red because I got a little bit of orange. Kind of like, well, I'm going to get a little bit more right here, especially in the middle. Get in there. Now I'm going to come with my red. Ooh, that's a little bit much, friend. And now I'm just going to stroke it to give it that poof, poof look, right? Okay, done. Simple. Now, our spaceship should be done. I'm going to go over this with the red just to show you the difference in vibrancy between just doing red on the cardboard versus red underneath. White underneath, sorry. So, you see how that's a bigger pop of color. So I'm going to paint this white and so that these two look the same, but I just wanted to show you the difference between the two. And now I wanted this one to be yellow. See if I just put the yellow, how it's hardly yellow on the cardboard, but now with that white underneath it, it really shows up, right? Yeah, that's good color right there. Perfect, you guys. Now, the last part, again, is optional with the foil, or you could use some silver paint, or you can leave it as is. We are going to need to cut the shape of our spaceship, so I'm going to show you a quick way to do that. So, lay down your cardboard piece. Preferably, it's not going to be wet because your foil will stick to it, so if you have time, wait for these two to dry before you do this step, but you can go ahead. So, what you're going to do is put your foil on top and gently press either with your finger or with a tool the corrugation. Run your fingers along it, right? This is going to give us the outline of our spaceship shape. Make sure you go all the way to the edge so that you're getting the correct shape. This is where it can be a little bit difficult for small kids, so silver paint may be the better option for littles, super littles. Okay, so now I'm going to come along my edge with my finger so I know where to cut it here. Right, and I know here it stops. Here it stops. I have nothing there. And I also know that I got that hole in the center. Okay, so now I know basically the shape that I need to cut out. You can remove your cardboard from underneath it. See, it did mess up my paint because it was still a little bit wet, so I'm going to repaint that right quick and then show you. Is that not quite dry yet? So now we're going to cut this out, preferably with scissors. I just have my Exacto Blade. Again, put something under it when you're doing this. And then, as far as your circle, again, you can come across with a little bit of an X. Oops. Hold it down when you're doing that, maybe even turn it. And then, essentially, all you have to do is bend that back. Once we put it on our cardboard piece, we can even better figure out how it'll look. Lay that on there. Well, we're going to put down our glue first, and then lay this on top of it. And then you push this through so that you can see the inside of this. So with the glue, you don't have to go in every single crease. Your foil might not touch all those anyways. Put your little glue on the outside edge. Get as close as you can to that edge without like getting glue all over the place. This one you're going to put on top of the corrugation. You may want to add a little bit here around your ring. And again, you don't have to go everywhere. You could do a couple in between. Now, lay this down. Here's where you'll see if you did a good cut or not. I want to see a little bit more of my texture, so I'm going to kind of come in with my finger just a little bit. You don't have to press down super hard because it will like pull the foil up and change the way the bottom looks, but now there we have the main shape of our spaceship. I'm going to go ahead and paint this other side red, and then I'm going to cut some pieces to make some little details. The rest of the design is not necessary. I'm going to show you how to do it, and if you have time, these are all extra detail elements that you can add to make it more interesting, right? But already, with it on top of the background, looks pretty cool, right? If you want a little guy in that hole, you should keep the cutout that you did earlier in paper, because ta-da, it's the same exact shape. However, you can cut it down to make it a little bit smaller. You don't have to glue the whole thing on the back, right? But lay it down. Give yourself a little drawing in there. I'm going to do a quick astronaut. And then he's got another small ring on the inside. Some little muffs. A little antenna thing. The other part of his suit. A reflection in the glass, and he almost looks like an alien. Alright, so I'm going to glue him up to the back side. And there we have it, our astronaut slash alien dude. You can again go further and have your students use markers and color your astronaut or your alien on the inside there. I'm not going to do that today. Okay, so spaceship's done. Well, the basics. If you want to add any detail, like some little strips across the top, I did in my other piece. Again, these are optional with your cardboard. You can either have them go straight across or curve. Obviously, something that's straight is going to be easier to cut than a curve. So I'm going to use this piece of cardboard just to cut a couple of straight edge pieces. And you could have these pre-cut for your students like little scraps, and they could totally use a pair of scissors. Get your spaceship back up there and measure out the length that you would need. Say, okay, I'm going to cut it right there. There's that piece. And I want to put one up here. And there we have it. You can leave it this color, you can paint it, do whatever you'd like in terms of color. For the sake of me not having to put a white coat down, I might just paint these black. Well, tell you what, I'm going to mix a little bit of blue and a little bit of white, and that should do the trick. Glue that up. Okay, the last part that we're going to do, guys, to make our spaceship raised on our space background is find a scrap piece of cardboard, and you don't want it to be longer than your chip here. So I know that I just want it to go basically from here to here. Does not matter the shape. We're not going to even see this part. Okay, so I'm going to cut it off right here. You just don't want to be able to see the cardboard from the front, right? So when you cut this piece and you put it back here, you don't want to be able to see it when you turn it over, okay? So it's a little secret thing to make it a little stand off of our spaceship background. Okay, and then go ahead and glue that on the back. So now that we have all of our parts together or done, let's put them all together, you guys. So now that we've got our spaceship raised, look how cool that is, right? We're going to now glue this on. remember, space-wise how much you have. Before you even glue this, you may want to check to make sure your fire indeed fits. You see how, because we raised it, now we can fit that fire up underneath the rocket a little bit. So, glue it up, stick it up under there, voila, look how cool. Oopsie daisy. Now, do you want the spaceship, the planet? Doesn't really stand out too much in terms of the background, so I think I'm going to stick to my moon here. So, here's where you can add a little bit of detail with your Sharpie that we had before. Make some little craters. Doop, doop. Doop, doop. But, hey, look at that. Now, if you'd like to add any other details with your Sharpie or some vavavoom, I'm going to outline this here. You may, if your students are struggling, have them do all the detail stuff before you glue it down. Otherwise, they're going to have to kind of hold it like I'm doing. If the paint is wet, it's going to kind of mess up your Sharpie a little bit. Oops. Wait for that to dry and it'll be better. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Whatever designs your students like at this point is what's going to make their artwork their own, right? More interesting. So they don't have to do exactly what it is that I'm doing here. Okay, I want to have this poofy. So cool. I think I might leave it like that and not even outline. I think I want to do some little dots. And voila. Okay, you guys, here's our final piece. This was so much fun to make with you guys. I hope that you enjoyed it and that you come back in the future for more virtual art studio lessons. Thanks again. Bye.